The wail of sirens shattered the stillness of the lake, sharp and jarring against the calm hum of the summer morning. I was making my way down the gravel path toward my dock, fishing rod in one hand and a bucket of bait swinging in the other, when two sheriff's cruisers skidded to a halt in a spray of dust. The deputies stepped out, their eyes flicking between me and the winding road beyond my property. And there she was, Karen, the neighborhood's self-declared rule enforcer. She stood on the roadside in a wide-brimmed sun hat, arms crossed tight, her lips pursed so sharply she looked like she'd bitten straight into a lemon. She stabbed a polished finger in my direction, her voice sharp and accusing, something about blocking the road to the lake. The officers humored her for all of 10 seconds before one of them glanced past me at the shiny silver Lexus sitting sideways on the shoulder. The shoulder, I might add, was clearly marked with a bold yellow "No Parking a Fire Lane" sign. His expression hardened as he motioned to his partner. Together, they approached the car. My jaw nearly dropped when one deputy pulled out a ticket book. Karen's rant froze mid-sentence as he slid the citation beneath her wiper. Her face flushed not with shame, but with that furious crimson that makes you wonder if someone's about to burst. She waved her hands wildly, trying to explain herself, but the deputy simply raised a hand and pointed at the sign. That's when she spun toward me, eyes blazing with a mixture of rage and desperation. And as the lake breeze tugged at my cap, I realized something. Karen wasn't finished with me. Not by a long shot. Back then, I had no idea how far she'd take things or what it would take for me to finally push back. Just 2 weeks earlier, life at the cabin had been peaceful. It wasn't a palace, but with its wraparound porch, cedar scent, and a view of the water that could make you forget the rest of the world, it was everything I needed. My late wife and I had bought the place 20 years ago, back when the HOA was nothing more than friendly neighbors swapping recipes and fishing tips. No one cared about parking, so long as you weren't blocking the old dirt road. Then Karen moved in, fresh from the city. She carried herself like neighborhood rules were federal law. Within a month, she'd wormed her way onto the HOA board. Within 2, she was president. Her first act? Slapping up new signs about parking, noise restrictions, and even what kind of lawn decorations were acceptable. I tried to be cordial. Once, I offered her a couple of fresh-caught bass. She turned them down with a tight smile and said, "I don't eat fish from this lake yet. Too many boats, too much runoff." That should have been my first clue. The trouble truly began when my son James, his wife Molly, and the kids came up for a weekend. They'd driven 3 hours loaded down with hot dogs, marshmallows, and enough soda to fuel a week-long sugar rush. My old Ford was parked by the shed, James's SUV in the gravel driveway. Later, Molly's sister and her husband arrived in a small sedan. When we realized the driveway was full, I told them to ease onto the grass beside the road, making sure not to block traffic. Karen saw it. 15 minutes later, she was wrapping her fingernails on my porch railing. "That's illegal parking," she declared. "HOA rules. Move it immediately." I kept calm. "Karen, it's just for the afternoon. We're not blocking the road." Her eyes narrowed. "This is how it starts. People think they can park wherever they want. Then chaos." She waved toward the road like she was warning of the apocalypse. I gave in and asked my guests to shift the car a few feet, just to keep the peace. But from the determined set of her shoulders as she stormed off, I knew she wasn't finished. The next day, while we grilled on the porch, she passed by again, this time snapping pictures with her phone. No greeting, no wave, just click, click, click. I waved anyway, hoping for at least a nod. Nothing. I told James, some folks care more about rules than they do about people. If only I had known she was already setting the stage for her next stunt. The morning the deputies arrived had started off as calm as could be. The water was glassy, loons calling in the distance. I grabbed my bait bucket and was halfway down the dock when the growl of an engine broke the peace. Karen's Lexus slid to a stop right in the fire lane near my mailbox. She stepped out, sunglasses on, phone in hand, looking like she was preparing a news report. That was my warning. 10 minutes later, the sheriff's cruisers rolled in, lights flashing. And you already know what happened next. Now I stood frozen between my cabin and the lake as the deputies conferred near her car. My heart pounded, not knowing whether they'd side with her, with me, or with neither of us. Karen's smug look had shifted into something sharper, darker. She raised her voice again, storming toward Deputy Harris as he finished scribbling on the ticket. The tension in the air was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. Her voice grated across the gravel like fingernails on a chalkboard as she gestured wildly at the road, the lake, and then at me like I was the source of every problem she'd ever faced. Deputy Harris held his ticket book steady against his arm, patient but unyielding, while his younger partner, Collins, leaned against their cruiser, clearly more interested in the lake view than the drama. "You can't just ticket me," Karen shrieked, loud enough to send ducks scattering from the shoreline. "I am the HOA president, I know the rules." Karen's voice rose higher, sharp with indignation. "This isn't even real enforcement. You can't ticket me for this." Deputy Harris didn't so much as blink. "Ma'am, the sign clearly says no parking a fire lane. Your vehicle is parked in the fire lane. County ordinance couldn't be clearer." Karen's jaw clenched like she was chewing on glass. "I'm here on official HOA business." Harris's tone stayed even. "I'm not here to enforce HOA business. I'm here to enforce county law." Her eyes darted toward me again, narrowing like a hawk locking onto prey. My shoulders tightened, but I kept still. Sometimes the strongest move is refusing to give someone the reaction they crave, and I had a feeling Karen thrived on conflict. But not this time. This wasn't her battle to win. Still, standing there, I couldn't help but think back to how all this mess had started, how Karen had slowly cranked up the tension, like a pot left boiling on the stove until it spills over. At first, her antics had been almost laughable. A politely worded note in my mailbox about my non-compliant porch furniture, 3 Adirondack chairs in mismatched colors. A pointed comment at the home meeting about unnecessary noise when James and the kids played cornhole in the yard. And then came the infamous trash can incident. It was garbage day. I'd rolled my bin to the curb the night before, same as I had for years. At 6:15 the next morning, I stepped out to grab the newspaper and there she was, standing over my can like it had broken a law. "You know the rules, don't you?" she said sharply. "Trash cans aren't supposed to be out until 6 a.m. the day of collection. You left this out last night." I glanced at my watch. "Karen, it's 6:15 right now." "That's not the point," she snapped. "Rules are rules." I wanted to laugh, but I just nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." She walked away as if she'd just done a public service. At the time, I figured it was just one of her quirks, annoying, sure, but nothing to lose sleep over. I was wrong. That morning by the lake, with deputies standing between us, I realized Karen's obsession with rules wasn't a harmless personality trait. It was a weapon. And now, it seemed, she'd decided I was her favorite target. Deputy Harris turned his head slightly toward me. "Mr. Turner, is your vehicle anywhere near the road?" I shook my head. "No, sir, my truck's parked by the shed. Driveway's clear." "Any guests here today?" "Anyone parked illegally?" he asked. "Not today," I said. "Just me and the fish." Karen let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, please. Yesterday his guests were blocking the road." "I have photos. I'll send them to the HOA board or the county if I have to." I stayed quiet, letting her words hang heavy in the humid air. Harris's gaze drifted from her Lexus, to the bright yellow fire lane sign, then back to me. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "this citation stands. If you want to dispute it, you can do so in court." For a moment, I thought she might actually combust. Her face twisted, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying and failing to find the one argument that would undo it all. Finally, she spun on her heel, muttered something under her breath, yanked open the car door, and slammed it shut. The Lexus roared off, the ticket still tucked under her wiper. The deputies left soon after, and the lake settled back into its usual calm. I poured myself a cup of coffee on the porch and tried to let the quiet sink in again. But peace never lasts long with Karen around. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. "James." "Dad, everything okay out there?" he asked. I gave a dry chuckle. "Oh, just a typical Saturday morning, a coffee, fishing, and a visit from the sheriff, thanks to Karen." There was a pause before James sighed. "Want me to come out next weekend, help you deal with her?" "Nah," I said. "I can handle it." Truthfully, I wasn't sure I could or not if she kept escalating, but I wasn't about to make my son worry. By mid-afternoon, I'd almost managed to shake the morning's nonsense. I made a sandwich, read a few chapters of an old paperback, even dozed in the hammock. For a moment, life felt normal again. Then came the crunch of tires on gravel. I figured it was Pete, my neighbor 2 cabins down, maybe bringing me some sweet corn from his garden. But when I stepped outside, it wasn't Pete. It was Karen. And she wasn't alone. 2 people trailed her, each clutching a clipboard, their stiff expressions making it clear they weren't here for small talk. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "Jack, we need to address multiple violations on your property." I raised an eyebrow. "Violations? Number 1, she said briskly, your dock is painted an unapproved color. Number 2, your mailbox sits too close to the road. Number 3, you've been allowing overnight guests without registering them." I stared at her, then at the clipboard carriers. "So you brought backup. They're members of the HOA Compliance Committee," she said, as if their presence sealed her authority. I knew most of the committee, and they were usually fair-minded folks. But the way they hovered behind her now, pens at the ready, it was clear Karen had been working them over behind the scenes. What happened next felt almost surreal. Karen strutted around the perimeter of my property, pointing at things like a drill sergeant on inspection, while the other 2 scribbled notes and occasionally glanced at me with guilty looks. When she reached my mailbox, she tapped it with her pen. "See? 2 inches too close to the road. The rule is clear, minimum distance required." I cut her off. "Karen, the county installed that mailbox when they paved the road. You planning to tell them they violated your rules?" She sniffed. "We'll see what the board decides." By the time they finally left, the sun had nearly dipped behind the trees. I stood on the porch, jaw tight, watching her silver Lexus disappear around the bend. It was obvious now, this wasn't about rules. This was personal. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept circling back to her face when the deputies slipped that ticket under her wiper. How her confidence had cracked, her smug expression shifting into panic. It hit me that Karen wasn't just a bully. She was a bully who couldn't stand losing. And the next time she came after me, she'd come with everything she had. I thought I'd have some breathing room before Karen struck again, but I was wrong. She came back swinging the very next morning. The pounding on my front door jolted me awake at 6:45. I stumbled out of bed, tugged on a flannel shirt, and opened the door to find her standing there, hair perfectly combed, clothes crisp, eyes cold and sharp. In her hand was a sheet of paper. "This," she said, thrusting it at me, "is an official warning. You have 72 hours to correct your violations or face fines." I unfolded it and scanned the list. Sure enough, everything she'd rattled off yesterday was typed neatly on the pagia, plus a brand new charge: unauthorized modification of shoreline property. "What modification?" I asked flatly. She pointed toward the dock. "Those flower boxes. They weren't there when I moved in. They obstruct my view of the water." I stared at her. "They're geraniums, Karen." "Rules are rules," she replied with a tight smile. Something inside me snapped. "Karen, yesterday you called the cops on me and you're the one who left with a ticket. Now you're here at dawn waving around made-up violations. What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" Her smile vanished. "I'm trying to maintain standards, Jack. And if you can't follow the rules, maybe you shouldn't be part of this community." Without waiting for an answer, she spun on her heel and marched away. I stood in the doorway, the paper crumpling in my fist. This wasn't about geraniums or parking spaces anymore. This was war, and she had just fired the next shot. I dropped the notice on my kitchen table, but it sat there like a ticking bomb, its black print screaming fines, violations, and deadlines. I tried to shake it off or make coffee, keep busy, act normal, but every time I passed the table, it pulled me back in. By 10 o'clock, I'd had enough. I changed into work jeans and headed for the dock. If she wanted the flower boxes gone, I'd take them down. I unscrewed the first one, set it on the boards, and wiped the dirt from my palms. The whole thing felt ridiculous. I was angry, yes, but also stubborn. This was my home, my refuge. I wasn't about to let a title and a stack of papers drive me out. That's when I heard a voice across the water. "Morning, Jack." I looked up to see Pete Dawson paddling over in his old green canoe. He and his wife June had owned their cabin 2 lots down for as long as I'd been here. Our grandkids had grown up together, chasing minnows and racing through the grass barefoot. Pete was a simple man, a broad smile, weathered hands, his favorite bait shop's cap perched on his head. He believed most problems could be solved with a handshake and a good meal. Morning, I called back. You ever seen a pair of geraniums that needed a permit? Pete chuckled. Dangerous things, those geraniums. Didn't you hear? They start rumors. He tied off to my dock and hauled up a cooler. Inside was a pile of corn, picked yesterday, sweet as sugar. Pretty sure it's legal. For the first time all morning, I laughed, really laughed. We sat side by side with our feet dangling over the water, talking about fishing, the weather, and whether the loons would nest by the reeds again. For 15 minutes, that notice on my kitchen table didn't exist. Then Pete turned serious. Jack, I know she's got a habit of blowing small things out of proportion, but you're not in this alone. People see you. They notice when you fix boards on other folks' docks, or let kids cut through your yard to swim, or pick up trash on the road even when your back's acting up. You're not the problem here. I swallowed hard. Thanks, Pete. He stood and slapped his knees. By the way, June's porch step is loose. I was gonna fix it, but these knees creak louder than the boards. Think you could? I'll be there after lunch. I interrupted. No charge, but I'll take a slice of June's peach pie if she's offering. He grinned. You're a good man, Jack. By noon, my mood had lifted. I tucked the flower boxes behind the shed where only the squirrels would bother them, tightened a few loose dock rails since I already had the tools out, and made myself a sandwich. Then I took the familiar path to Pete and June's place. The pine needles crunched soft beneath my boots, and the sunlight blinked through the branches in shifting golden dots. This simple walk, this PCA, was the reason I loved the lake. June opened the door before I could knock. I heard her footsteps before she even knocked. June always said I walked like a drum, linear, steady, loud, impossible to miss. Means I'm still alive, I joked as she opened the door. Step stubborn, she said with a grin, but so am I. Come in, the pie's cooling. You fix the porch, and I'll fix that sweet tooth. I crouched down and spotted the issue right away. A cracked stringer and nails that hadn't held their weight in years. A quick brace, a few deck screws, and a new board later, the step was solid again. Simple repairs are the ones I love best. A wood, numbers, and knowing exactly how hard to drive the screw. After packing up my tools, I washed my hands and sat at the table as June slid a plate toward me. I heard she handed you a notice, she said softly. She did. 3 days to make it right, though I'm not sure she even knows what a right means. June folded her hands. Some people treat rules like umbrellas, handy when needed. Others wield them like swords, always cutting. I'll take umbrellas, I said between bites. And pie. We laughed, and for a little while, I forgot about my morning. But stepping off their porch, I caught a glint of silver between the tress of Karen's car. My stomach dropped. By the time I got back to my cabin, a neon orange sticker clung to my mailbox. HOA notice. In bold letters, it demanded, mailbox must be moved back 2 inches to meet clearance requirements. 2 inches. I shook my head, stunned by the absurdity of it. Behind me, a door slammed. Karen was already walking away, clipboard under her arm, sunglasses flashing my own reflection back at me. You're really doing this? I asked, my voice more weary than angry. She didn't pause. We're enforcing standards, Jack. That's how property values stay intact. That's what everyone agreed to when they moved here. I moved here before all those papers, I shot back. Back when standards meant saying hello and letting babies sleep. Move the mailbox, she said coldly. You've got 71 hours left. Then, looking past me, she added, is that truck even registered? I glanced at my old Ford, a loyal beast that had carried more memories than she could ever understand. Runs just fine, I answered. I'll need proof. She scribbled something without asking. And your dock paint? It's not the approved shade of gray. It's gray, I muttered. The wrong gray, she said, already walking away. And remove that unsightly bait bucket while you're at it. I stood frozen, the weight of her nitpicking crashing over me. Mailbox, truck, paint, bucket, all so petty, yet all piling on. An old saying from my carpentry days came back, don't swing a sledgehammer at a thumbtack. Watching Karen, It struck me sledgehammers were all she had. I didn't chase her. Instead, I rinsed out the bait bucket, tucked it behind the shed where only raccoons would judge it, and sat on my porch. Children's laughter drifted down the road, a dog barked at a crow, a fish splashed in the cove. The lake carried on, no matter how many clipboards appeared. That night, I called James, told him not to come out, told him it wasn't his fight. We argued until we hit that familiar Turner family true: see you love each other, disagree about the rest. When I hung up, the house felt too still. I dropped the needle on an old Sam Cooke record, letting his voice push back the silence. The next morning, I measured the mailbox twice, dug a fresh post hole, and moved it back exactly 2 inches. It felt like winning a rigged game. I snapped photos, emailed them to the HOA address Karen always signed as President, Lakeview HOA, and kept my message short: mailbox relocated per notice. An hour later, another car door slammed. Another orange sticker: Doc paint sample required, submit by Tuesday. My jaw tightened, but I stayed put. Running to meet her every demand only made her escalate. By noon, a tow truck rolled up the road, gravel crunching under its tires. A tall man in a dusty hat stepped out. "Afternoon," he said with a polite tip. "Name's Rick. Ho called about a derelict vehicle parked here." He looked at my Ford with something like respect. "Doesn't look abandoned. Looks like she's still got dignity. She's insured, registered, and running," I told him. "Been in the family since my wife and I bought this place. Hauled our first canoe, hauled our first grib. I've got papers to prove it." "Please do," he said. "Makes my job easier when I've got the truth in writing." I brought out the glove box folder: insurance, registration, even a receipt for the new battery. Rick examined them slowly, careful not to miss a thing. Karen's voice sliced in from behind me. "We have the right to remove non-compliant vehicles." Rick didn't turn. "Ma'am, you can enforce HOA rules, but state law is my line. This truck is insured, registered, and on private property. I won't tow it." Karen's jaw tightened. "Then no fees. We'll fine him for every day it sits there looking like a farmyard." Rick handed back my papers with a look that said he'd seen this play out more times than he cared to. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Fine-looking truck. My dad had one that ran past 300,000 miles." "Thank you," I said quietly. He tipped his hat, climbed back into his rig, and rumbled away. Karen stayed, radiating heat like a roof in August. "You're racking up fines," she hissed. "You may think you are winning, but this is bigger than you." I drew in a breath. "Karen, I don't want to win. I want to live, to fish, to watch my grandkids roast marshmallows without you measuring stick length." "Stick length is a safety matter," she snapped. "Karen," I said softly, "when's the last time you enjoyed this place without clipboards and rules? Just the water, the quiet, the reason we're here." For a fraction of a second, her face shifted a hurt, maybe, but it vanished. "Doc paint sample, Tuesday," she said, and marched off. By late afternoon, I decided if she was going to hand out samples of bitterness, I'd offer a different kind of kindness, not to her, but to the people who deserved it. I walked to the Dawsons and fixed a wobbly rail I noticed while eating pie, waved across the cove at the Martins and brought over my extra propane tank when their grill sputtered out. And along the way, I picked up 3 empty cans. I picked up 3 empty cans along the roadside and tossed them in my trash bin. When I returned, I noticed a lanky teenager crouched on the edge of my dock, his sunburned nose poking out from under a backwards ball cap. He was staring at my tackle box like it was full of gold. "You fish?" I asked. He jumped, shoving the box away as if it had burned him. "Sorry, I wasn't taking anything, just looking." "We just moved here." "I'm Tyler. My dad says we can fish, but we don't know what works in this lake." I sat beside him. "Crickets will do, worms too. But if you're after bass, this purple plastic worm with a nose weight might make you a hero." I showed him how to set the rig. He fumbled, tried again, and then smiled wide when he got it right. I thought of my own first time, my grandfather's big hands guiding mine, the fishing line between us like a thread of trust. Tyler cast, the lure splashed. We waited. The sun stretched long across the water. A tap-tap hit his line. He lifted, reeled, and suddenly his whole face lit up. I got one. I got one." A small bass broke the surface, flashing green and silver. I taught him to wet his hands, thumb the lip, and hold it gently. He released it back into the lake and watched in awe as it swam off. "Thanks, mister. What's your name?" "Jack," I said. "Welcome to the lake, Tyler." He bolted up the path, yelling for his dad, while I sat there smiling. For a minute, everything felt simple and good. Then a car horn blared from the road, sharp and impatient. I climbed the hill to my driveway, and the side waiting there crushed that good feeling flat. Bright orange cones lined the road in front of my place. 30 feet of plastic set in a crooked line. A sandwich board sign stood on the shoulder. "Temporary road closure in a safety walk." Karen's silver Lexus blocked the fire lane, angled across it like a stopper in a bottle. She stood next to it, a reflective vest over her blouse, holding a neon baton as if she were directing air traffic. 2 committee members, Linda Pratt and Howard Cole, hovered with clipboards, looking uneasy. A pickup sat idling at the bend. Another car pulled up behind it, then another. The narrow road choked quickly. Weekend folks returning from errands now trapped in a growing line of vehicles. I stepped to the edge of my yard. "Karen, what is this?" "HOA safety audit," she declared. "We're studying traffic flow. This is official business." "In the fire lane?" I pointed at the yellow paint under her tires. She lifted her chin. "We're allowed temporary use for HOA events." "Anthesa," she gestured toward my driveway. "Is exactly why we need a plan." "Guests park carelessly. Your old truck blocks sight lanes. A child could get hurt." "My driveway isn't the road," I said evenly. "And there aren't any children playing in the middle of the street." "But there is your car in the fire lane." Another horn blared, louder this time. The man in the pickup leaned out. "Hey, some of us work late. Move the cones or take your circus somewhere else." Karen ignored him. "We'll be finished when we're finished." From the line behind him, another voice shouted, "Karen, that sign says no parking a fire lane. You can't block it." She didn't flinch. "I am the HOA president. I authorize the closure." My pulse thumped hard. I looked at the cones, the sign, the row of cars stretching past the curve. "Move your car, Karen. That lane is for emergencies, not experiments." She smiled coldly. "If an emergency happens, we'll move. Until then, this is observation." That's when the siren came, a distant wail, rising. Everyone froze. In a town this size, a siren always twists your gut. You pray it's nothing, but the sound grew, echoing off the lake and trees, rushing toward us. Neighbors quieted. The man in the pickup killed his radio. A woman rolled down her window, hand cupped to her ear. The siren was almost on top of us when the red strobe burst around the bend. A fire engine charged into view, heavy, urgent, lights screaming. 2 firefighters in the cab with faces set like stone. The fire engine rounded the curve and was met head-on by the cones, the barricade sign, and the silver Lexus planted right across the fire lane. Its brakes hissed loud and sharp, forcing it to slow too suddenly. Somewhere behind, a cooler tipped in the back of a neighbor's SUV, scattering ice across the pavement. The massive truck came to a full stop. The road was sealed tight. My throat dried instantly. "Karen," I called, my voice heavy. She froze, finally stripped of that usual confidence. The driver's side door of the engine swung open, and down stepped a man built like an anchor. Broad frame, late 50s, hair cut close, eyes lined with years of long nights. He moved with a steadiness that made the air heavy. His navy shirt and suspenders marked him clear, but I already knew. Fire Chief Mark Roberts. The kind of man whose handshake felt like steel and whose silence carried more weight than most people's shouting. He studied the mess in front of him, the Lexus, the orange cones, the painted words "fire lane" ignored under the tires. His jaw set tight. Behind him, the siren cut out, leaving only the idle growl of the engine, the water tapping against the rocks, and a stillness that pressed on every chest around. Then came the second siren, higher, faster, an ambulance rounding the opposite side of the loop. My stomach twisted. "Karen," I said again, my voice cracking this time, "move the car, now." Her hands trembled as she grabbed for her keys, but they slipped, bouncing off a cone before skittering under her bumper. She bent quickly, trying to snatch them, but they were stuck between gravel and asphalt. She scraped, cursed, tried again. Nothing. The ambulance braked hard into the same orange barricade. trapped behind the fire engine. 2 emergency vehicles, both blocked, because of cones, because of one car. Chief Roberts raised his head, eyes shifting from me to Karen. His voice was low, but it cut sharper than any shout. Who left this vehicle in my fire lane? No answer. Karen's baton sagged in her hand. The vest she wore looked more like a joke than authority now. Her lips parted, but not a sound came out. The radio on Robert's chest burst to life. Station 1. Caller reports elderly female. Difficulty breathing. Address a broken bar. I felt the words before I heard them. Pete and June's place. The chief's eyes hardened. He jabbed a finger toward the Lexus. Get it moved. Now. Karen crouched again, reaching for her keys, but they were wedged solid. She stammered, they won't come loose." "Then clear the cones, make a lane," the chief ordered. She hesitated a beat too long. That's when the neighbor stepped in. Pete's nephew jogged forward, grabbed 2 cones, and flung them into the ditch. A driver from the waiting line snatched a couple more. In moments, the blockade was breaking down. Karen stepped aside, smaller than I'd ever seen her, as the fire truck edged carefully through the new gap. The sandwich board sign crunched under a tire, flattened. The ambulance couldn't squeeze through with the Lexus still angled wrong, but the paramedics were already unloading gear. 2 sprinted down the road with bags and an oxygen tank, moving fast toward Pete and June's cabin. I didn't wait. I ran after them. Pete stood pale on the porch, one hand braced against the frame. Inside, June was slumped in a chair, breaths shallow, color gone from her face. "She was just making tea," Pete said, voice breaking. Then she said she felt dizzy and then she just a broken bar. I gripped his shoulder gently. "They're here now, let them do their work." The paramedics moved with calm urgency. Blood pressure cuff, oxygen tube, quick instructions in low voices. "June, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can." Her eyelids fluttered, her lips whispered something faint, but she was still there. I backed to the porch as Chief Roberts arrived, scanning everything with a hard eye. "She's stable enough for transport," one medic finally said. "Let's get her on the stretcher." The chief gave a short nod and turned to me. "We're taking her to county." "You riding with?" I looked at Pete. His hands were trembling. Pete's hand hovered over June's before he finally pulled back. "I'll follow in my truck," he said, voice unsteady. I didn't argue. "I'll stay behind. Make sure the place is locked up," I told him. The medics worked smoothly, lifting June onto the stretcher, strapping her in with care. The wheels rattled softly down the porch steps. Chief Roberts led the way toward the ambulance, now angled into the gap neighbors had forced open. Cons were shoved aside, the fire lane reclaimed. As June was loaded inside, I caught sight of Karen on the roadside, arms folded tight, shoulders stiff, but her eyes wouldn't hold still. They skittered everywhere except toward the ambulance. The sirens wailed back to life, then faded down the highway until only the crickets and the hush of the lake remained. Neighbors slowly peeled away, whispering in small knots. Some shook their heads, some threw sharp glances at Karen. I walked to her. "Do you see now why the fire lane matters?" I asked quietly. Her eyes flicked up to mine, then dropped again. "It's not just paint," I said. "It's the difference between someone making Ida or not." She opened her mouth, closed it again, then turned toward her car without a word. I let her go. Back on my porch, I finally sat. The adrenaline drained slow, leaving my hands trembling. An hour later, my phone rang. Pete's voice cracked through. "She's going to be okay," he said, relief rushing like a tide. "Doctors say it was just a sudden drop in blood pressure." Scared the hell out of me. "Jack, that's good news." "Real good," I told him. There was a pause, then, softer, "Thank you for everything." "You don't owe me thanks, Pete." Neighbors look out for each other, always. Evening settled over the lake in soft golds, the water still, the sky deepening. I grilled a couple of burgers, ate one, wrapped the other for tomorrow. For a moment, it felt like the storm had passed. But around 8:30, headlights swept across my yard again. Karen's Lexus. She didn't get out right away and just sat there, engine humming, like she was weighing her choices. Finally, the door opened. Her heels crunched the gravel. "I came to clarify," she said. "Clarify what?" I asked. What happened? It wasn't a broken bar intentional. I didn't know there was an emergency. That's the point, Karen, I said. You don't know until it's too late. She shifted, defensive. Still, I don't appreciate being treated like a criminal. I stood, slow, steady. Karen, you've called the cops on me over flowers, over a mailbox. But today your car nearly stopped an ambulance from reaching my friends. That's not HOA business. That's life or death. For once, she didn't snap back. She just looked at me, silent, before muttering, "Good night." Then she turned, got in the Lexus, and drove off. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. At 10 p.m., an email landed in my inbox. Subject: Notice of Special Meeting. A mandatory HOA session, Monday, to address recent events and review ongoing violations. My address was listed. Monday came heavy, though the skies were clear. I walked to the community hall with my hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets, the crunch of gravel under my boots. The windows glowed warm, silhouettes shifting inside. Every few steps, I reminded myself, stay calm. No matter what Karen throws, don't give her the satisfaction. The Lakeview Community Hall was no grand building, just one open room, folding chairs lined in rows, a corkboard pinned with notices about fishing derbies and pie socials. But tonight it felt like a courtroom. The board sat up front, a table spanning the stage, 3 chairs, 3 judges. Karen sat in the center, blazer buttoned, papers stacked with surgical precision. To her right, Linda Pratt looked uncomfortable, as though she'd been dragged here against her will. To the left, Howard Cole flipped through a folder like he might find a secret exit between the pages. The moment I stepped inside, Karen's eyes found me. No greeting, no smile, just a hawk's stare locking onto its prey. The chairs creaked as neighbors settled in. Some avoided my gaze, others gave me small nods of support. A low murmur filled the hall, the kind of hum that comes before a storm breaks. Karen rapped a gavel against the table, sharp as a gunshot. This special meeting of the Lakeview HOA is now called to order. Her voice was steady, clipped, rehearsed. We are here to review recent incidents, she continued, eyes cutting briefly toward me, and to consider corrective measures for ongoing violations within our community. Linda shifted uneasily in her chair. Howard kept his eyes on his folder. Karen's gaze swept the room, then returned to me. Mr. Daniels, please step forward. I stayed still a moment, then roused, boots heavy on the wooden floor as I walked to the front. Karen waited, expression carved from stone. Your property has been the subject of multiple complaints, she said, flipping through her papers like a judge reviewing a rap sheet. Unauthorized vehicles, unapproved landscaping, disregard for community standards, and most recently creating unsafe conditions for traffic during a critical event. A few neighbors stirred at that last line. Someone muttered, "That's not how it happened." Karen ignored it. We all saw the disruption, we all know the risk, but it is my duty to keep this neighborhood safe and orderly. Rules exist for a reason. I let her finish, then spoke evenly. You're right about one thing, Karen. Rules do matter, but they aren't meant to be used as weapons. My truck wasn't blocking anyone. My flowers aren't a threat to safety. The only danger that day was a Lexus parked in the fire lane. The room went still. Karen's jaw tightened. I kept going. An ambulance needed that road clear. My friends needed help. And if those cons had delayed the paramedics even a minute longer, we might be talking about something far worse tonight. Linda looked down at her lap. Howard shuffled his papers like they might save him. A few neighbors murmured agreement, louder this time. Karen lifted her chin, but there was something brutal in it now. We are not here to point fingers, she said. Then stop pointing them at me, I replied. The silence that followed carried more weight than anything else said that night.